If you have not read Watership Down yet, why not? I had not read it yet because I did not even know what it was. I had heard the name here and there, but I didn't know. I didn't even know it was about rabbits. And then when my brother started telling me about it, I thought, oh, it's just like a Redwall book. Not exactly. So I will start this spoiler-free. That part will probably be a little on the shorter side because it's been out for 50 years. And then I'm going to go into the deep dive portion, but I'll warn you first. So if you've not read it and would like to, I won't be the one who spoils it for you. Watership Down is a story about anthropomorphized rabbits. It started as stories that Richard Adams told to his two daughters on long road trips. And as a parent who makes up stories for my children pretty often, I can totally see where the pressure came from to turn it into a real book and write it down and save it. And I love that he did that, and I love that the dedication is to his two daughters. This is a novel. It is kind of on the adventurous side. It has all the elements that an epic fantasy book often has. It has the characters who have to leave home before tragedy strikes. There's danger, they have to rely on each other. There's enemies along the way, they face death, they face battle. If you have read any of the Redwall books, there will be some things that are familiar, but the rabbits in this book are very realistic. Richard Adams gives acknowledgement to the book The Private Life of the Rabbit by R.M. Lockley, on which he based his knowledge of real-world rabbits' habits. Didn't mean to rhyme. So instead of very human-like animals, they're not like cooking meals and fighting with swords or building houses. They have all the behavior of real rabbits. To make a new home, they dig in the ground, they dig burrows, they don't collect and save food, they go out and they nibble the grass. So it was really interesting to me. I felt like I learned a lot about rabbits. And one of the really interesting things is that in the wild, rabbits only live to be 2 or 3 years. A 3-year-old rabbit is old and experienced. And that short lifespan really shows in how the rabbits behave. When there's danger or when they decide to do something, there is no think about it and plan. There's just, hey, I think we should do this. Well, okay, let's go do it. There is only right now. They know they could die at any moment. Rabbits just die in the wild. There's diseases that they're very afraid of. There are natural enemies. There's predators, humans. And while in the story, they care for each other and they watch out for each other and they protect each other, rabbit death is still very real. It's part of their life. And so if a rabbit dies or they think a rabbit might have died, they'll be like, oh, that's too bad. It's too bad that that's happening, but such is life. They're sad about it, but they have to accept it. This book is written in 4 main parts. It felt like 4 separate books. It was so segmented into those sections. It felt like it could have been a 4-book series because each section had its own story arc and resolution. At the very beginning, they have to leave home. Or they think they have to. The main character, Hazel, has a friend named Fiver. Fiver is a seer. He has dreams, he has feelings, he has a lot of anxiety and panic. And in the Warren, the strong rabbits are part of the Ausla, like the guards, police, military, whatever, the strong ones who protect the Warren. And if a rabbit is not big and strong, they have to get their, I don't know what word I'm looking for, to be able to have something special about them. Sometimes they will pretend to be a seer. So the real seers aren't always believed. And Fiver is kind of excitable. He has panic attacks, basically. But his friend Hazel always believes him. He knows that what Fiver has is real. And so when Fiver is saying something bad is going to happen, we have to get out of here, Hazel doesn't even question it. He believes him. They go to the leader of the rabbits, the Three-Raw, who immediately discounts little Fiver. But they're able to get a couple of other rabbits on their side, and they flee. And over the course of the story, it follows those rabbits who were brave enough to follow Fiver and Hazel and leave home and start a new life. And all the adventures they have along the way, having to depend on each other, their courage, their brains. If you've never cried over a rabbit, you might. Okay, and here's where the spoiler-free portion ends because I'm going to go into the deep dive here. I have stuff I want to say about this book. One of my favorite things about this book is how the rabbits think about and treat Fiver. Fiver is the weird little rabbit with anxiety who has feelings that nobody else has. He can basically sense danger. Nobody else can. They have their normal rabbit senses where they could smell a fox or other predator or something, but Fiver is the one who can see beyond. He can sense the spiritual realm, if you will. And I love how over the course of the story, the rabbits come to trust him and rely on him. They went through a few adventures where they didn't listen, like the incident in part 1 with the rabbits who are too well fed. And ooh, that moment where he tells Bigwig, "You're closer to death than I," and then Bigwig gets caught in the wire. Oh, I also loved that was a turning point for the group. Besides the fact that they started trusting Fiver more, their flight from that place drew them all closer together. Because before, when they first left home, they were the band of misfits. Just a group of random rabbits who decided to go off on their own and find a new home. But through having to face such danger, and for rabbits, oh man, it's not the same kind of danger that a human might face. They get to a river, which is probably like a creek for us. But for them, it's unpassable. And they had to pull together to all get across that river. And when the dog is coming, real rabbits probably would have left Pipkin behind, but not this group. They banded together. They used their wits and their bravery to make sure every rabbit got across. When they were leaving Cowslip's Warren, I like that they acquired a new rabbit to take with them. When I got to the end of part 1, they have finally fled, not just from home, but from Cowslip's Warren, and they finally learned to rely on each other, and they finally make it to the place that Hazel and Fiver have been leading them. They finally find their new home. That felt like it could have just been the end. They've had their journey, they've been through adventures, they lived to tell the tale, they're home. Although I did start to wonder a little bit how they were going to start a new warren with only male rabbits. And that's the main thing we get in part 2. They kind of realize the same thing. To have babies, you need male and female rabbits. And so they've found their new home. Here's where they settle. They need some girls, some does. And that's kind of the main conflict of part 2. And it's where Hazel decides we don't just have to be rabbits unto ourselves. We share this part of the land with other creatures. Let's help them and maybe they'll help us back. And that works out really well for them. Although before I go farther into parts 3 and 4, I want to stop a moment and talk about the stories about El-ahrairah. I'm sure real rabbits don't tell stories about other legendary rabbits from their past. They probably don't have spiritual beliefs or seers or any of this. I really liked the stories about El-ahrairah. I liked that each of the 4 parts had a story. The story of El-ahrairah from part 1, I really got the feeling that it was to remind the rabbits, as they tell each other the story, of El-ahrairah the trickster and how rabbits came to be so fast. Because rabbits are naturally a prey animal. Other animals hunt them. Rabbits are not naturally hunters or fighters, and the story of El-ahrairah reminds them that they don't have to just live in fear. They're more than just a prey animal, and they have everything they need to survive. That's what I wrote down. They're equipped to survive and defy their enemies. They're cunning, they're fast, they're a digger, a listener. So I love that the rabbits tell each other stories to embolden themselves and remind themselves of what they truly are. But also, from the stories of El-ahrairah from the other 3 parts, I started to get a different picture, and I don't feel like it came up in the book enough. But here's what I saw from those stories. It was that El-ahrairah was never in it alone. The story with the cabbages, where he's in the dark. The 4th one, I think was just kind of a fun story for them to tell each other at that point. El-ahrairah always had Rabscuttle. And the rabbits telling the stories look up to El-ahrairah. He's the one they almost worship. He's the one they hold up as their example. But I felt like it was a lot like Sam and Frodo. El-ahrairah wouldn't have gotten very far without Sam. I mean, Rabscuttle. And I felt like that part of those stories was so true to the rabbits' life as they were looking for their new home and then trying to build their new home and then trying to defend their new home. None of them could have done it alone. Hazel always had Fiver. I don't know if you can hear the rain. It's really rainy right now, so it feels perfect to be sitting here talking about books while the rain is hitting my window. And then because I'm talking about this, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. No, not really. That's part 3. There is a part where Bigwig feels all alone. Bigwig is their biggest and strongest rabbit. He didn't have to believe Fiver in the first place. He didn't have to leave home and follow Hazel, but he did. And he has proven himself. And there was a little contention of, who's Chief Rabbit? Is it going to be Hazel, who let us out, or is it going to be Bigwig, who's the bigger and stronger rabbit? Bigwig always supports Hazel. He realizes Hazel is the better leader, and he's more the muscle in the group. After the incident with the wire, fighting off rats, he knows he can depend on his own strength, but when he gets sent into El-ahrairah and he is alone, he feels it. He is scared. He doesn't have a Fiver or a Rabscuttle or a Sam Gamgee. And, to be fair, he didn't do what he went to do all alone. He got Heisenflay, if that's how you say it, Heisenflay, and his friend, the seagull. And once he gets out with the does, he's immediately met by Hazel and his group. So he didn't have to be alone anymore. I wanted to talk about Blackavar, the rabbit who tried to escape from El-ahrairah and failed. He tugged on Bigwig's heartstrings. Bigwig got there. Actually, all the rabbits that visited El-ahrairah hated it. They could sense just how wrong it was. They could see that the way the rabbits were living wasn't right. Blackavar was one of the few living there who managed to at least make an attempt to get away. And despite the reason Bigwig went, to get some does, to get Watership Down going, to propagate their warren, once he saw Blackavar, he wasn't going to leave without him. I loved that part. I love Bigwig. I love Hazel. I love the friendships between the rabbits. I don't know that I would consider it a fantasy book, but one of those fantasy elements is that band of misfits from the beginning who go through the journey and the danger together and learn to rely on each other and trust each other's strengths, and that really shows by the end. It has everything you could want from an epic fantasy story, except it's rabbits. So I started reading the Redwall books when I was 14, I think. I didn't read this one until this last year. I'm not sure I would have really loved this at the age when I read the Redwall books. In my early teens and young adulthood, Redwall was what I was looking for from fantasy books about animals. Reading this in my older 30s, I felt like I could really appreciate the deeper themes, the deeper emotional connections between the characters, and everyone lives. All the main characters live at the end. Not everyone lives. The main characters live, which I actually didn't expect because rabbits just die. It's part of their life. I'm really glad they all lived at the end. That's what I wanted. So if you've watched this far and you've read this book, let me know what some of your favorite things were about it. And also, because I keep thinking about them in comparison to each other, if you've read any of the Redwall books, let me know what you think was a good difference or similarity between those books. I liked that the animals were more realistic, and I would recommend. And I'll see you back here for more videos. Bye.